Hi everyone. So this is chapter 7 of Brain Facts. Um, I'm gonna be going over this section by section so that it's pretty clear and easy to follow. I'd just like to point out that this first years of life section that's titled in the Brain Facts book has a lot of really important statistics and percentages that you need to remember. So in this video, I'm gonna go over the statistics and the ways that I remembered them. So the first thing is the weight of an infant brain as soon as you're born at the baby is only 370 grams, which is around 13 ounces. For reference, your 1 pound is 16 ounces, so it's a little less than a pound, which is really, really small, right? In comparison to an adult brain, which is 3.3 pounds, which is almost 48 ounces. So if you think about it, this is almost 3 times as much as your normal weight, right? So how does the infant brain become the adult brain? Well, there's really rapid development after birth. So basically, first, immediately after birth, so for the first 0 to 3 months, there's a 1% growth rate. Remember, 1% may seem really, really small, like initially. That is 0.01 of your whole brain mass adding continually for 3 months. Until you hit 3 months after birth, your growth rate slows down to 0.4%, right? So if you think about it, your brain mass is increasing by 1/100th every time immediately after birth. And that makes sense, right? Because you have to have speedy growth rate. You learn a lot of things immediately after birth. We'll get more into that in later progression. And then 3 months after birth, your growth rate becomes 0.04. And at the 3 month stage, your brain is 64% larger than it was at birth. So, first, how I remembered these statistics, right, is I remembered this 3 months 64 benchmark. So, at 3 months, your brain is 64% larger than what it was at birth. From this, you can kind of work backwards, right? So this happens after the 64% benchmark. So in order for it to increase in 3 months, your brain to increase by 64% larger than at birth, think about it, right? In um in 3 months, there's around 90 days, right? So give or take, you need to have almost a percent growth per day to get to 64% larger at than at birth, right? So you kind of work backwards and memorize the statistics. To be honest, I just remember it as like from 0 to 3, you need as rapid growth as possible. So that's 1%. And then after birth, it's 0.4%. And these statistics are very commonly tested in the brain bee competition. So I highly suggest memorizing this. Now let's check out why your brain, like what caused that 60%, 64% larger than at birth statistic. Well, there's one region that grows particularly large, which at 3 months becomes 2 times the volume it was at birth. What is that region? The cerebellum. So at birth, right, this region, it's this small. Then at 7 months, it's a little bit larger, but just imagine at like 3 months, it would just be a little bit smaller than this. But still, that's a huge, huge like multiplication. So just think about it, right? When you're in the room, you can't really learn movements because you don't need to learn movement. But when you come out of the room, you start learning a lot more things such as walking, crawling, um, even moving your arms around, gaining leg control, gaining arm control. All of that occurs after birth, not during birth. So that's why your cerebellum, which again is very closely coordinated with movement and balance and timing and coordination, grows twice the volume that it was at birth. Now, let's go into the cerebral cortex. In the cerebral cortex, your neurons in the cerebral cortex increase by around 23 to 30%, which also contributes to that 64% larger than at birth statistic. So what happens is this happens for two reasons, right? First is that there's an increase of neurons itself. Remember in the last embryology lecture series, I talked about how neurons proliferate, differentiate, and migrate. So in other words, they are formed, they are specialized, and then they move to the position where they belong in. This process doesn't actually stop with birth. It continues on after birth. And this process leads to something called synaptogenesis, which if you break down the word, translates to synapse, synapto, genesis, creation of, so creation of synapses. So basically, when neurons are developed and they keep moving, the axons and dendrites will meet in different combinations to form synapses, because that's what a synapse is, right? It's a dendrite and an axon connecting together. So it forms new synapses, which increases the volume of the brain as well. And finally, another is that your glial cells begin to rapidly increase as well. So your glial cells, an example of that, which is actually really prominent in development, is oligodendrocytes. Remember, oligodendrocytes' function is to increase or produce myelin, which insulates neurons, right? And in the cortex, that's really important because you make a lot of communication decisions, and your higher function neurons need to communicate faster with each other, which is why they're more highly myelinated. And that also increases the volume. So the increase of glial cells in the brain, as well as the increase of neurons themselves, will cause a massive increase in volume. And if you look here in this diagram, this is kind of a diagram showing how as age increases, where the white matter distribution is in the brain. So where lower red or green to kind of indigo regions signifies lower concentrations, whereas 0.1 to 0 signifies high concentrations of myelin. So you can see as time progresses, so this is at 8 years, and this is, I think, at 30 years, the myelin concentration has significantly increased. And think about it, right? As you as you get older, you learn a lot more new things. And if you learn a lot more things, you need to make more connections and you need to access your connections faster, which is why myelin concentration will also increase. And uh, like also, in conjunction with this, myelination also increases in the limbic cortex. So just think of if myelination increases, it enhances the function of that region, right? So if myelination increases in the cerebral cortex, the function of the cerebral cortex will increase or be enhanced simply because there's more communication that's allowed to happen. If myelination in the limbic cortex increases, you get to make more connections faster, or you get to feel more deeper emotions because there's more speed going on, there's more efficiency in communication, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's that one section, and I strongly recommend memorizing all of the statistics on this page because I encountered all of these at some point in the Brain Bee competition. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope this video was helpful, and if you guys have any feedback, please leave a comment down below or email me at stemwme@gmail.com. Thank you. Bye-bye.